Hey homesteaders, so today I want to do a little video for you guys on the different canners and what they can, what they're for, and kind of how I got started with canning as far as like the first thing is, I'm not telling my life story. So the first things I got with canning, as well as like books you can get, basically how to get started, how to make sure that your stuff doesn't go bad. Canning is a lot of hard work between harvesting, prepping your food, getting it cooked, getting it canned. So you want to make sure nothing goes bad, right? Right. So you need to make sure you're using the appropriate canner whenever you're canning to make sure you have your foods safe to eat in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, however long it takes you to go through your food. I still have stuff I canned in 2016, but it is pickles, so it's in vinegar, so it's gonna be fine until probably the day I die. But anyway, let me turn this around and show you my canners. So this is a steam canner. This is what it looks like inside. You've probably seen this before in my videos. It has this lovely little rack in it. It's very shallow inside, so I fill this up with water just until it starts showing through on my rack. This canner is the same as water bath canning. So anything you put in here is going to be the same as water bath canning. Now, I prefer the steam canner over the water bath canner these days because a lot of the pickles and things I do require quarts instead of pints. Now to show you the difference, this is a pint-sized jar. It's got dry beans in it. Dry beans. This is a quart-sized jar. See the difference? Very big quart-sized jar. A little bit smaller, pint-sized jar. Again, this just has dry beans in it, so it's not been canned or anything. But if you look, this is the water bath canner that I usually use for my little short jars, and the quart-sized jar is too tall for it. When you're doing water bath canning, you always have to make sure that your water fully covers the lids of your jars at all times. Otherwise, they're not going to seal properly. So you have to make sure that your canner is going to be tall enough to cover the jars completely. Now, there are specific canning pots that things are massive and they take up a lot of space. I don't have room in my cupboards for a big canning pot. So I just always used what I had. Like, this is what I got started with, was just my conventional pot. It fits my half pint sized jars and covers them with water perfectly. So I did that, and I did the even smaller little 4-ounce jars in there. If I was doing pickles, oh my goodness, guys, I'd have to lay my quart jars on their sides, and then I'd have to try and fish them out of boiling water that was literally like spewing everywhere because you got to get it boiling, and my hands would get burned and it'd be all over my stovetop, and it was just it was a disaster. So I switched and went ahead and invested in a steam canner, which I'm really glad I did. I'm telling you, I bought this thing I think 2 years ago, which means I was water bath canning in my regular pot for 5 years. Just do yourself a favor and buy a steam canner. They're not that expensive. I think this one was like $50. It's worth it with the amount of jellies and pickles and things you can have. Now let me show you this. If you want to steam can, which is the same as water bath canning, look at that. Wow, so many jars. I could even fit one more right here. Pop that lid on, leave it boiling for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what your recipe says. Take that lid off, facing it away from you with the steam not being in your face, and boom. You don't have popping boiling water going all over the place when you're trying to get these jars. Isn't that fantastic? I love my steam canner. So I'm not putting things in here that are necessarily safe for steam canning. I'm just illustrating how many jars it fits, the different sizes of the jars that it fits. It's awesome. You want one. If you're going to be doing canning, if this is going to become a hobby of yours, or even, I mean, a lifeline for survival, because we might be getting to that point, who knows? But if we do, you'll have a steam canner. If we don't, good. You'll have your own homemade jellies and jams. So the thing about steam canning or water bath canning, you can only do this with high acidic foods or things that have a lot of vinegar. So yeah, you can make pickles, water bath canning, but cucumbers are not acidic enough to actually can without the vinegar. So you can't like put cucumbers in a jar and have no pickling spice and vinegar and all that stuff and expect your cucumbers to stay good. They're not. They're going to go bad. So you need to make sure that when you're water bath canning that you have high acid foods those are gonna be any of your jelly things, any of the berries. Apples are high acid, peaches are high acid, peppers, I pickle my peppers, so yes, I'm able to pickle those. Like this is jalapenos. I did habanero peppers, I did bell peppers, I did jalapenos, I did banana peppers. Those were all in my garden this year. I have so many of these jars sitting around, and all I did was a 3/4 vinegar, 1/4 water ratio, and cut them up. You can see they're in little slices, and pickled them. Jason loves these on his Mexican food when I make that, or in his chili when I make that. So they're nice to have around. I have a little pickled jalapenos, habaneros, banana peppers, bell peppers, whatever. They're all pickled. They're ready to go. I wouldn't be doing that with them if I didn't have vinegar in them. I would be steam canning those things. A good book to look into. This is my Back to the Basics canning book for water bath canning. So this has guidelines on how to do it, good recipes. Everything that is listed in here is going to be really good for anything that you want a water bath can. So this is basically a water bath canning book. It comes in real handy with just about anything you want to make. So a foolproof guide to canning jams, jellies, pickles, and more. It even has condiments in it, like how to can barbecue sauce that you've made from scratch, or how to can rib marinade, or like whatever sauces. It has sauces in it too. So you'd be amazed all the things that you can water bath can, and not even have to get special canners to do it. However, again, I highly recommend the ease and the least amount of mess with the steam canner. But I wanted to show you the difference between what they look like and what they do. Let me put the lid back on. I have shared my steam canner link in the past in the group. I don't know if it's still there. So let's move down here. These are another couple of methods. I'm gonna have to adjust my phone. Another couple of methods of food saving. So I got this for Christmas. I'm really excited about it. I've used it a couple of times. This is the Food Saver, but let me show you, it has an accessory port, and I have these mason jar lid accessories that I bought separately. This is what I do for my dry goods. So if you want to keep your dry goods from drying out, this is dry beans, rice, even dried corn, like popcorn kernels. So you could do this with flour, with Bisquick, as long as it's not wet, with basically anything that you have that you may want to keep. So I've got things. Basically, bread making stuff is all canned safely. So I've got flour, I've got cornstarch, I've got baking soda, I've got baking powder. I bought it in bulk from Costco. I put it in mason jars. I sealed those suckers. They are safe. And they're safe for mice, because mice can't get into these jars. I can hardly get into them. So I know a mouse couldn't. But when you're doing these, basically, I can't get the rim off. I'll use one that doesn't have the rim. Basically, you take it, stick it on here, boop, stick this in there. Oh, you'd get it a bit better. I need two hands and I'm holding the phone. So, there we go. Stick this in here, turn it on, turn this on seal, let it go. It's going to suck the air out, and that's going to preserve your dry goods even longer. So this is another canning method for dry goods. If you want to keep dry goods on hand, I have like 4 cases of bread flour out in the garage, quart-sized cases of bread flour, because I bought a 50-pound bag from Costco. And it took me 2 hours to spoon it out of that bag into quart-sized jars, seal those suckers. But hey, you know what? I can make bread for like a year. Every day, if I wanted to, every day. And my kids would be fed on bread. Man can live off bread alone, I guess. Anyway, so that's the Food Saver. And of course, you can use it for other goods as well. I have my little roll in here, so you can put meats in there. If they need to go in the fridge. Anything that you do in here, like leftovers, you put it in the fridge, but it extends the life of the leftovers just a little bit longer. So if you didn't eat half of your steak at Longhorn, you bring it home, you want to save it a little bit longer, you just slap it in the Food Saver, seal it on both sides, suck out the moisture, and you get your steak a little bit longer. So anyway, that's the Food Saver, and it's kind of a cool little gadget. I got a little bit of a nicer one. There's a more inexpensive one, but the mason jar accessories don't work for that one. I learned the hard way, so that was a buy and return item. Anyway, last but not least is my beloved pressure canner. I finally bought one of these this year for the first time. I am not a master pressure canner. I know I kind of might come across as like a master canner. I am not. I am learning right along with you. A lot of times I am just sharing with you what I'm learning as I'm learning it. And I like to pass it along, the information, the knowledge. So most everything you hear from me is not mine. Recipes are not mine. They are ones that I've tried from other people, and I'm just simply passing them along. I might modify them a little bit, so I guess that would kind of sort of make them mine if I'm modifying them. But for the most part, I'm just passing along recipes like biscuit recipes and stuff that are just tried and true. Every grandma in a vicinity uses the same biscuit recipe, so it's just a tried and true recipe, and I like to share it. So anyway, as far as the pressure canner goes, this is the All-American. You can buy a cheaper Presto. Canners are canners. Just make sure that they have this little thing. This is a weight, and this has the weight amounts. I don't know how many of you live like super high up in the mountains, or you know, in places that aren't as humid or whatever else, but your book tells you based on your altitude what weight to put this on. Most of us will be at 10. If you live anywhere in the South, in the Midwest, anywhere that's not on top of the Rocky Mountains, or you know, like really, really high up there, you're going to be putting this on a 10 weight. This is what differentiates this from a pressure cooker, which is different from a pressure canner. So let me show you this too. This valve, I've shown this to you before when I've canned in it, but this actually goes up to the 10 pressure when you get your heat right, and it should maintain that, and this will be releasing pressure to keep it balanced at 10 the entire time you're canning. Now you can see where it says caution. That means you've got your stove turned too far up. Turn it down. It needs to stay around 10 to make sure those jars don't explode and that you don't have issues with your canner. Now every pressure canner, let me try and get the lid off. These things are heavy, by the way. Every pressure canner, and mine is well used, has a rack inside. You always make sure your glass jars are sitting on top of that rack inside. You can see my water line. I usually fill mine up with water until right about here, and that's a good place to have it. And then I put my jars in. They do not have to be fully covered with water when you are pressure canning. Now, things you can pressure can are things that you cannot water bath can. So I canned ground beef, I can broth, I can chicken, I've canned bacon, I've canned hot dogs, you can can squash and green beans. A lot more of your vegetables that are lower in acid. Pineapple, if you want to can that without having to add like weird things to it to jelly it, you can pressure can it to keep it, and it's much better. So the pressure canner is good for anything kind of extra else. Beans need to be pressure canned. They can't, I mean, like cooked beans, not dry beans. Cooked beans need to be pressure canned. You always need to make sure you find a recipe that tells you exactly what your headspace is, and honor the headspace, because if you don't, you could have an exploded jar. You could have a faulty lid, so the lid won't seal. So then your food will go bad within 48 hours. If you have not sealed it, it's just like leaving chicken out on the counter. If it's not sealed, the lid, then it's basically like leaving chicken on your counter for 48 hours, and you don't want to eat that. My book, I don't know if you get a Presto, if it comes with a book, but my canner came with this book, and it tells me everything I need to know. It gives me recipes. There's spaghetti sauce. There's how to do tomatoes, preparing tomatoes, instructions. So it's going to tell me the basics. I use this. I pull it out all the time. There's corn, how to can corn in your pressure canner. Okra without vinegar, so not pickled okra, but okra. Snap beans, asparagus, tuna, clams. Look at all this chicken. Now, I open to this page a lot. This is chicken. This is beef, meat stock. This is anything that you have. It tells you exactly how long it's supposed to process for in a pint versus a quart, what your weight needs to be, with the little weight that I showed you. So this is a very important book that comes with it. If you buy one of these, don't lose the book. You will be turning to it literally all the time because I don't have it memorized. Kind of rule of thumb though is meats will cook under pressure for about 95 minutes. And then if they're in the quart, if they're in the really big size, boop, 95 minutes. If they're in the smaller size, boop, 75 minutes. That kind of is about the norm for all meats to go in the pressure canner. You do need to honor headspace. Now, if you raw pack, so I raw packed this. Raw packing meat means that you're putting meat in when it's uncooked. So that means that when it cooks, it's going to go way far down, right? Because meat is thicker, bigger when it's raw. And then when you cook it, it cooks out some of the juices and everything, so the meat cooks down. So believe it or not, I did a video of this, I think, last week and showed what these jars look like. This was 1-inch headspace, which was all the way up to like the rim right here. When I cooked it, you could see how far it cooked down. That doesn't matter. My meat is still good. This is still a secure can that I cooked, even though it looks like it's really far down. And all this meat in here is cooked through. So this is actually the meat. I didn't put any liquid in there with it. This is the meat's own grease. And all I need to do when I open this is drain it, season it, put it in whatever I'm going to put it in. And I have my meat done. So that is your pressure canner. I wanted to show you real quick the difference, and I'm watching my time because Judah's gonna be home. I'm gonna go open the garage just to let the bus drivers know that I am here, because Judah is gonna probably be home soon, and he's on a substitute bus, so my Here Comes the Bus app is not going to alert me when he gets here, so I'm kind of having to like watch the road. So if I'm darting, if my eyes are darting, it's because I'm also watching the road for him. But I'm gonna take you in here. This is my appliances area. This is the Instapot. This is a pressure cooker, not the same as a pressure canner. Now, some of these do come with a canning button on them. That's water bath canning. That's not pressure canning, okay? Because this does not have, you can see all it has is a steam release. It does not have a weighted valve. It does not have a pressure gauge. It's not maintaining anything. It's just cooking it. So yes, that's about the same as steam bath, water bath. I've never personally put jars in there because I don't trust them not to beat together and break, and I'd just rather not. But the pressure cooker, and it does come with like the little turret that you put your jars on. You never put your jars flat on your metal if you're going to be bringing anything under pressure. That's very dangerous. But that's the pressure cooker. It's not the same as a pressure canner, and I don't recommend it. So anyway, I was going to show you, last but not least, the books that I have that I turn to whenever I have any questions. So The Complete Guide to Pressure Canning is one of the books that I turn to, and it has recipes in it. And luckily, oh, thank the good Lord, it has an index, right? Because I don't want to have to flip through this entire book to look for vegetable soup and what their recipe is and how to can it. I will say this, when you're canning stuff, it's not a really good idea to just add your own things. Like if you're doing vegetable soup and it says you can put corn and beans and all that stuff in it in the book, you can put those in there and it's okay, but don't throw in squash if squash isn't added, which, but to each their own. But don't throw in like random things. Now you can add extra seasonings to it. One seasoning that you should never can with is sage, because it goes rancid really fast, and even in the jar it will change flavors and like make stuff taste weird. So if you're trying to go for like a blackberry sage jelly combo, then that is actually not a good idea to do when you're sealing your jars. If you want to add sage to something, then it's better to season something after you've opened it and when you're ready to use it, and then maybe like mix in a little sage to it. The same thing goes for anything else that you're cooking. If you're wanting to add another ingredient, add it after you're opening your jars and you're ready to serve them, and then you can add whatever else ingredient you want to do, because you're not going to can it. So then it's perfectly safe to do however you want to do it. So another book is the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. Again, it has all of your steps and how to do it. This is a mixture of, I don't know if you can tell, this is a mixture of water bath and pressure canning. So this is basically like everything, everything you can imagine that can be canned. And this is things you can make full meals and can them and have them forever, and that has a full meal in it. Word to the wise, you cannot can anything with dairy in it. Keep the butter and stuff out. You can add that after you open something up and you're heating it on the stove. Milk, butter, creams, those do not can well. If you can freeze your cans, now I did this in the summertime because I had tomato basil soup that I was making for a big tea party in 3 months, and I had fresh tomatoes and I wanted to serve it with fresh tomatoes and fresh basil that I had gotten straight out of the garden. And so I went ahead and made the soups. I put them in quart-sized jars, and I immediately took them and froze those suckers in a huge standing deep freezer at our church. And they kept great. They were still good. 3 months down the road, it was like had just been canned. The flavor was out of this world. You can freeze mason jars. You cannot freeze the ones with like the little shoulders on them. So if you're looking at those cute little flat jam jars, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They almost look like little squares, but they're flat and they've got these really long shoulders on them. I don't have any because they're useless to me, but they're short and flat and have shoulders. So if your jar has what's called shoulders, you cannot freeze it or it will explode. These types of jars, your traditional jars, do not have shoulders. So I know it kind of looks like they might puff out a little bit, but they are about even with the lid and the rim. So that's not considered having shoulders. So those jars are completely fine to freeze. So if you have to make something that has milk in it, you want to save it, you want to put it in a jar, all you do is just pop the lid on, stick that in the freezer as long as it doesn't have shoulders. So that wraps up this video. I'm still kind of watching for Judah. I hope that explained everything to you for beginning canning basics, the differences in the canners, the differences in the jars. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability, or I will look them up, because a lot of times when I'm answering things, I'm literally like fanning through my books and looking them up to see if I could find an answer for you. So if you're gonna get into canning this year, I highly recommend that you start by buying your jars now. When strawberry season hits, there won't be any of those 1/2 pint jars or 4 ounce jars available because people will be buying them up to do their canning. So I always stock up on jars at this time of year, like our Target's loaded down with them. So get your jars, get your lids, your extra lids, get your canning tongs, all the tools that you need to can with, get your canners, get ready, and happy canning. And of course, I'm always here to answer questions if you have any. I will be doing videos during strawberry season of the different strawberry concoctions that are being made in my kitchen, and I hope you guys enjoy making them in yours as well. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you later because I'm going to show you my potato soup and my bread later this evening. So see you then. Bye.